Hello there, this is Giant Master Daniel 96, and in today's video, I'll be doing a fun facts video about the book Darth Plagueis on the creative process. I'm going to be going over some two questions from an interview with James Luceno, and I found them pretty interesting. And one of them is going to be about the George Lucas part, and I did it like 3 years ago, but I decided to kind of this as a remake, so with out of the way, let's get to it. So, first question is, how closely did you work with Lucas licensing on Darth Plagueis? How much did George get involved? What advice did he give to you? And here's the answer. George was involved in the early stages. When the book was first proposed, I wrote to him and asked whether there was any reason why Plagueis couldn't be a non-human, and he wrote back that Plagueis could be a Mun and sent me some artist renderings of the character. From that point on, everything was approved. As they're saying, at the highest level, I worked most closely with George's right-hand man at Lucas Licensing, Howard Rothman. It was a strange way to go about the book because I kind of had to bypass both Del Rey and the usual editorial staff at Lucasfilm and work directly with Howard over the course of what amounted to about a year of preparation. I submitted many versions of the outline until we finally reached consensus on where we wanted to go with the book. The marketing text, this is canon at the highest level. I suppose that's true that a lot of the stuff came from the very top levels of Lucasfilm. Everything was approved at the high level. I had to make the assumption that Howard was speaking directly with George about a lot of this stuff. I didn't have any meetings directly with George, but it seemed like a lot of the approval was coming from him to Howard. I was not privy to all of the things that happened behind the scenes. So that's a pretty interesting answer Luceno provided about, how George Lucas said Darth Plagueis could be a Mun and all that. And, is this canon at the highest level? And it was, coming from some higher ups at Lucasfilm at the time, obviously from the creator himself and all that, which I felt that was, some pretty interesting. And, with George Lucas's right-hand man at the time, Howard Rothman, on the licensing part. So pretty interesting stuff there. And the next question is, the interviewer asked, you mentioned Mother Talzin of the Dathomiri Night Sisters, a character we've already seen on the Clone Wars. Did you work with Dave Filoni and his team as they were preparing to introduce her last year? Did you collaborate with them in terms of how you handled Maul? And Luceno asks, there was a lot of back and forth with Dave about Maul and Maul's background. The two short stories that I've written for the re-release of Shadowhunter and the re-release of the Phantom Menace novelization are going to deal a lot more with Maul's background and Maul's early years. They almost could be chapters lifted from Darth Plagueis, but I didn't want to change the point of view and take the story into recounting Maul episodes as well. The story that's in Shadowhunter especially is going to explain a lot about Maul's transition to Sithhood, and I did work very closely with Dave on that because they had their own ideas about Maul's background, and we went back and forth until we reached an agreement on how we're going to present the material. So, interesting thing there on how Luceno was, making this book at the time when Dave Filoni, was working on the Clone Wars at the time, and would bring it in like Darth Maul and all that. And this book, was even published the same year that Maul came back in the Clone Wars. So something to think about there. And because before Maul came back in the Clone Wars, we assumed Darth Maul's home planet was Iridonia, but the Clone Wars, retconned it and said Darth Maul comes from the planet Dathomir. So, and then they, talk about the short stories and all that. So, they did come to an agreement on how they could make it all fit together, which is pretty interesting there. And that's, the questions from the interview. And I thought there, were some pretty interesting answers Luceno provided on both those questions, on how I said about George Lucas's involvement with it, and him, talking with Dave Filoni and all that. I thought was pretty interesting as well. Yeah, let me know what you think down below. I'll link the full interview down below for you to check out yourself. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment below, share this video, tell your friends to subscribe, follow me on social media, Twitter at DanRS87, Instagram JamMasterDaniel96, Facebook JamMasterDaniel96, and join the Discord server, which will be linked down below. Have a great day, and may the Force be with you. Bye.